Well, hey there, friend, and welcome back for another episode of the Your.Hair.Mentor podcast, where I'm your host and your hair mentor, Crystal Green. And I invite you to come take a listen to the top leaders and thinkers and experts and innovators in the beauty industry as they share their stories of triumph and struggles and success in creating their businesses behind the chair. I hope you enjoy these episodes just as much as I did recording them. See you on the inside, friend.
So, Samantha, I would love for you to give me a little brief introduction of like where you are and who you are, because I hear a little bit of an accent in your voice that I didn't know was there actually.
Yes, I'm from Oklahoma and I'm in a tiny town, like 4,000 people. And I've been doing hair now for like almost a decade, which sounds crazy because I feel like it's flown by. But I kind of went about it in a backwards way, is what I always tell people. I grew up with both of my parents working in the industry, and I wanted to kind of rebel and do something different. So I went to college, did that whole thing, and then ended up just circling back and going to cosmetology school. So here I am.
Yeah. What did you study in college?
I studied communications and I minored in marketing. And so it kind of goes hand in hand, with the social media world that we live in now. And honestly, like, yes, I could have started doing hair sooner and, made more money that way. But I feel like I needed to be a hairstylist in the social media world. Like if I would have got in immediately after high school, I don't know if I would have been as successful in my Instagram journey later, just because it's hard to add new things in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once you're working behind the chair, like it's so hard to do anything else but serve your clients and work your
Mm-hmm.
business.
Yeah. And I feel like I always like joke and say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And that is how I am as a person. Like if I get in a routine of something, I'm really good at sticking to that routine. But you throw me new info and new tasks, I can't hardly handle it. So
Well, you seem
I
to be
did it at the
handling
right
it.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. You seem to be doing it just fine, according to social media. So,
Oh, well, thank you. It's a
yeah.
lot for sure. I mean, it's a full-time job in itself.
Yeah, it
Just
absolutely is.
like filming, and I don't have an assistant. So I don't know. Do you still work behind the chair?
No, I actually stopped in April. I still see people for like modeling stuff because I'm putting
Mm-hmm.
together like some educational pieces. But even then, like I don't have an extra set of hands. And so I don't know if you can see behind me. Oh, I can barely see it. I have like this little gooseneck thing that I actually learned from you
Okay.
in Carly's education. I'm pretty sure it was you that was using this little gooseneck phone holder
Yep.
thing because I'm like, what am I going to do? I need to like strap this thing on my forehead in order to get the shots that I need.
Seriously, I love that tripod. So I have someone that works with me. I still do behind the chair work like 1 to 2 days a week, but I try to pack people in. And so I hired somebody to help me just like blow dry and shampoo. But I can't have her really film for me because she's trying to blow dry. So yeah, that gooseneck tripod has been a game changer, and it gets all the angles. Don't you feel like?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm really tall. I don't know how tall you are, but I'm 5'11". And so
Oh
like
my gosh.
so many of the tripods don't go tall enough to like come from behind me. And that sucker will come from behind my shoulder up and over. And I love it.
Okay, that's good to know because I'm only like 5'5". So I always tell people that's why I like it because it can go behind me. But it's good to know that it gets even taller for people that are
Mm-hmm.
taller. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It's great. Okay, so you started beauty school. I want you to like walk me
Mhm.
through this journey of yours because for those that don't know, you've been like wildly successful in your social media presence. And I think, do you have a business with your social media stuff now too? Like you're teaching social media or not quite yet?
I teach classes, but I don't have like a subscription or anything, but I do go and teach classes at salons and things on social media. So
Okay.
I started that journey um, this year, actually, kind of end of last year. I kind of veered away from like color education and more into social media just because I know how much it's changed my career. Especially being from a small town, I never would have gotten the opportunities that I've gotten and had the success I've had if it wasn't for the apps. So I always joke and tell people that Instagram kind of saved my life.
That's sweet. I
Yeah.
mean, I get it though too. I have like such a love-hate relationship with social media because I've heard you say this and I've heard other people say this. It's like not your own property, right? Like it's
Mhm.
rented land. And so
Mhm.
it's like kind of dodgy to put all your focus and your eggs in that basket, but at the same
Mhm.
time it's such a beautiful tool for us to use.
Yeah, and I think the boundaries. I know that when you're scrolling through, it can seem like the comparison, and I'm sure you can relate, everyone listening too, like you think that you're not doing enough or you're not doing it quick enough. And I feel like that's kind of the goal in my classes is just to show people that like everybody's journey is going to be slightly different and that's okay. If we were all on the same journey, then it would just be like a bunch of robots walking around trying to do the same exact thing. We want to have a little different, differences between us because that's what makes us unique.
Mhm.
So just
Okay.
kind of staying in your own lane and patient.
Totally, totally. And like, yeah, enjoying the journey and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that it's all just part of like the grand scheme of things.
Yep.
Okay,
Exactly.
so you started working behind the chair post college.
Mm-hmm.
How soon, when you started working behind the chair, did you start like growing a social media following?
So I always like to add this because I grew my social media kind of quickly. However, I did it in a way that I don't recommend to anybody. Um, at the time that I started my social media, I was in a unhealthy marriage, and instead of going to therapy and doing it the healthy way, I took all my stress, anxiety, fear, all the things with my marriage, I took it into social media. And so for that reason, I was on the app like all the time. I mean, if I wasn't working behind the chair, I was posting pictures or engaging or creating stories. And so I was able to grow my following like, I don't know, 6 months. I feel like I hit like 10,000 and then it was just off from there, which I know is not normal. So I just like to preface by saying that I was on there all the time and nobody needs to do that.
Right, right. When you first started posting, were you doing the same kind of posts that you're doing now? Because now I feel like your posts are like they're educational. You're like showing what you're doing with your own hair. It's
Mhm.
not too much like, hey, let me teach you how to do hair on a client, right?
Mhm.
Would
Mhm.
you agree? Okay. Did you start it that way, or was it more like posting pictures of clients and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so it was posting pictures of clients in the beginning. And the reason that I never posted my face before is because I have had like this like imposter syndrome or like confidence issue in fear of judgment or criticism, which I think is also something that not a lot of people talk about. And I know it's common because when I teach at my classes, the response I get is everyone feels the same way. It's scary to put yourself out there, if especially your face. It's scary to put your work too, but when it's your face, it's this whole other layer. So I finally, like probably 3 years into to posting consistently, I finally posted my very first video that had my face in it. And the reason I did this was to kind of heal and kind of put my divorce behind me and kind of my past traumas behind me. So I released like a story video. And when I did that, the response I got showed me that like that's what people really wanted to see. And so
Hmm.
now I just try to incorporate a lot of that through my page.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's like once you realize who you're serving and what they need from you, I think it flows a lot more naturally.
Yeah, and I think that, the thing I was most scared of is what people were wanting on my page. And again, everyone's page is a little different. So that's where like insights and stuff come in handy. But if you have a video that just really takes off or a photo, I always say like create 10 more just like it and see what happens because there's a reason it did good. And if it just, there is those ones that just end up being lucky, but chances are that's something that your audience likes. And so you want to keep giving them more.
Yeah. And so now, where do you see this going for you? You mentioned a second ago, like you don't have a membership or anything like that. Do you see yourself kind of leaning into the social media education a little bit more and turning that into an income maker for you?
Yeah, so I do the classes and I have some classes available on my website, like online ones that are pre-recorded. If you don't live somewhere where I can come and teach in your area. But I'm starting a podcast and I feel like kind of my passion is in the vulnerability side of it and just showing people that although somebody does have a large following online and can come across as, quote unquote perfect, I feel like people get that idea, that they have struggles too. And I think that it's okay to admit that and to show that side of things too, because somebody's sitting at home right now. Like I know when I was going through that with my ex-husband, that I would have loved to just see anybody admitting that they were having problems. And you don't have to make your problems your identity by any means, but
Right.
just sharing like a happy ending that came from struggles. And that's where, in the future, I want my podcast to go and just help me build this community, almost like coaching, I guess, community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can always coach people on hair color techniques, but social media and mental health is my passion for sure.
It's funny. I feel like I seem to be attracting more and more people that are leaning into that side of things. And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that's just where the industry is going right now, or if it's just like, you kind of go through like ebbs and flows of people that
Mm-hmm.
you meet in your life. And it seems like literally everyone that I've been talking to lately is like mental health of the hairdresser, health and well being of the hairdresser. Like, let's take care of ourselves and make sure that we can do this and love
Yep.
it throughout our career.
Yeah, because I think so my mom did hair for, I don't know, I always mess this up, like 20 years or something. She now has a cosmetology school, so she doesn't do hair anymore. But especially back when she was working behind the chair, you left your problems at the door. And I think that honestly, like the pandemic and everything is kind of what woke people up to, we can't leave these problems at the door because they're becoming so like apparent that we have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the positive thing that came from all of that was just the openness that it's created. Because you're right, everyone now is voicing a little bit more the struggles, whether it be comparison or just like, I don't know how to do this technique or whatever.
Yeah, it turns out I'm not perfect. Weird.
Yeah, weird that we're not robots, which I feel like it's so crazy now to think back to before all of this happened with me. Like I know for a fact that I used to think the same thing about people, but now that I'll hear at shows that people are saying it about me, I'm like, "Oh, no, no, no. We got to put a stop to this
Yeah.
because I'm far from perfect." And that honestly, you just kind of made me think of that. But that honestly is kind of what sparked my passion for the mental health because people were coming up to me and saying like, how do I get to where you are? And it's like, no, trust me, you don't want to have to go through all that.
Yeah.
Um, you don't want to do anything the way I did it. Trust me.
Mm-hmm. I
It's
think
not
that's
good.
yeah, and like I think that's the piece of the mental health thing with hairdressers is like we are burnt out. We've been doing
Hmm.
this forever. Like, please let me show you a way to not get to this point. Let's do it in a way
Hmm.
that's like healthy, that serves you while you still serve your people?
Hmm. Yeah. And is that kind of why you are shifting to
Mm-hmm.
more? Okay. Yeah, because we have like 10 jobs, right? Like we used to, you just came in, you did your clients, you sold some products, you moved on to the next client. Now it's like the editing, the videography, photos, and then we're just constantly comparing through TikTok, YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
all of the apps, and they keep adding more.
I
It's
know.
like, how can we keep up? You just keep
Yeah.
throwing more at us.
Well, hopefully they won't all last, right? Because we just can't keep up with all of them.
No way. Unless we, I guess, hired a full team. But that's the other thing. Do you have anybody that helps you right now?
Kind of. I have some like very generous friends that have experience in other parts of the world that I do not, like marketing and networking and those kind of
Uh-huh.
things, but very little. Like it is 99% me.
Yeah. And I think too, if you don't hire that, like right off the bat, then it's hard to let go of control, right? And I think that with social media, I was listening to Carly's episode on your podcast, and she said, she always wants to be the one responding to messages and posting her content because that's her page. And I 100% agree. So I've recently tried to hire out maybe like, podcast editing and a virtual assistant for like email marketing and things like that
Mm-hmm.
that I'm wanting to add into my business. but I don't have yet. So it's easier to let go of that control.
Yes, yes. It's funny. So with hair, I worked with plenty of assistants in my career, but I got to a point where I was like, I need help, right? So I'm going to trust this person that I'm kind of overseeing. So I was still kind of micromanaging them a little bit, you know? But it was like a learning curve. And then I got used to having them like, I know they can do these tasks and these jobs, and I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable with it. The online business is still like a baby business to me. And so I've had to kind of reframe my mind and be like, okay, I need to emulate that same feeling of like, it's okay to let go. It's okay to trust, even though it's not running like a well-oiled machine yet, it's okay. So I've looked into getting some virtual assistants. I know for me, I had a hard time thinking like, okay, what are they going to do exactly? What part of the business doesn't need my exact voice in it, right? And yeah, it's like the email responses, and I still do my own podcast editing, but I kind of like it. Like to me, that's almost like an artistic piece of it. But not everyone does that. I know most people want to have someone else take care of that for them. And I don't know if that's because like with my conversations, I don't edit out anything. Like no one said anything super weird or like uncomfy or anything like that I felt like I needed to like, you know? So I just leave the conversation natural. And then I just work on the intros and the outros and all the cool little bells and whistles on my own. But I could see how some people wouldn't want to do that. So
Yeah. See, for me, I hired the podcast editor that I hired. So I did it like monthly, so she's going to help me with my launch. And then I think I had to like commit to a month after the launch just for management. But she was totally fine with me saying, I don't really know what I'll need. So we can kind of customize that package as we go. But for me, like just the unknown of the podcasting, I feel better like with launching and all of the emailing and the clips and all that getting done by someone else as I kind of catch my footing. But I'm like you, I don't expect to take out a ton of the conversation. Mine's more so like my solo episodes that I'll be releasing. I will sit there and critique
oh
every
yeah.
single word that comes out of my mouth. And
Uh-huh.
I can preach it all the time to people not to do that. And I know, like I literally know in my soul that it doesn't matter, but I can't stop. I'm like crazy psycho with it. And so I'm glad to know that you're saying you agree with that.
Oh, totally. And like when I started doing this, it was all solo episodes, and I just didn't have the time to sit and pick apart each episode to try to edit out things. So I just didn't. So if I like stumbled on my words, I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's try again. And I had people emailing me and messaging me saying, I love that you leave that in. Like, I love that part because it makes me feel like I'm just having a conversation with you and it's natural. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll roll with it. I was like, I just don't have time to be,
Well, and
worrying
right.
about
And
it.
when you're having the conversation back and forth, though, like, yes, you may say something where you like stumble over your words or whatever, but it's a conversation. So it doesn't feel as vulnerable to me if I
Mm-hmm.
fumble over words then when there's another face on the screen. But it's weird talking to yourself. If anyone listening has never done it, it's a whole different world that I'd never been to until I
Mm-hmm.
started this stuff. And now I'm like, whoa, I really did just talk for 20 minutes to myself with no responses.
Totally. I felt it more strange because I first made courses that
Mm-hmm.
I was launching to the general public about like how to style, manage, and maintain your hair at home. And when I was making those, oh my God, like talking to the camera by myself, like I'd be like, okay, I have this whole like skit,
Mm-hmm.
lined out and I'm going to do this thing. And at first I would have, it was my phone that I used to film everything. I would have it in selfie mode so that I could like see that I'm in the frame. So I'm like
Mm-hmm.
watching myself on camera trying to talk. I was like Anchorman, when he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I was like, I'm so weird right now.
No,
So coming
I
from that,
totally get it.
I feel like the
Yeah.
podcast was easier because I'm like making all these weird hand gestures when I'm talking and I'm not worrying about the faces that I'm making or what I'm doing. It was to me a more natural progression. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I do not want to make more videos. That is uncomfortable.
No, videos are so uncomfortable. And I always tell people this because, like I think sometimes from the outside looking in, people think that everyone thinks their job's the hardest, right? So
Yeah.
people think that creating content is not hard. Like, oh, I've heard so many people, oh, you just have to wake up and film videos all day. But it's like, no, it is it's so tiring, in my opinion, because of what you just said. You're having to think of your hands, your face, your twitches that your eye does or whatever. I've noticed that my eye twitches when I'm doing videos. Would I ever have known that before? No. But when you're editing your face all the time, you start critiquing yourself even more. And so that does take a toll on your mental health, and it is mentally exhausting. It's not
Mm-hmm.
physically exhausting, but it is mentally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe there'll be a wave of people that are talking about the mental health of podcasters next. Or maybe we
Yeah,
should start that movement. I like this.
maybe, maybe. But so with podcasting though, when you do your own, do you record? You don't record your face in there, or you do?
I have not, no.
Okay. Yeah.
And and even with these videos, I have not stepped into video podcasting. Like, I know people
Uh-huh.
put them on YouTube and stuff like that. I just haven't because it's just an extra step. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I've got my platform and I've got a system and a rhythm and I know exactly what to do and how to do it. And I just use the video clips for like promoting.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I should do that. And then that would mean I'd have to do an intro and an outro where I'm filming myself, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and then it goes back into that whole editing yourself thing. But see,
Exactly.
we're all just out there, critiquing ourselves.
Yep.
Every single person's doing it. And we all need to just be a little easier on ourselves. I don't know how to get there. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
working on it, but
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I find out, I will let everybody know.
Right, right.
I promise.
Yeah. Well, I kind of had like an aha moment myself with like what I'm trying to do with my online world here. Like, what's my purpose? What's my passion? Who am I trying to reach and who am I trying to talk to? And I forget the author's name, but there's a book called I think it's called Story Brand. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so in this book, the author talks about a good story. There's a hero of the story always, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
there's like the mentor that helps the hero, and they go through like some sort of like problem that they have to solve together, and the hero can't do it without the mentor. And there's like a crescendo, and then maybe there's a villain or whatever. The point being, there's a hero of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us, when we go to tell a story, do a business, do a service, whatever, we try to make ourselves the hero of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're focusing on us and we
Mm-hmm.
think that everyone's looking at us, but really and truly, like, we are not the heroes of the story. For example, if you're a hairdresser standing behind the chair, who's the hero in that story? Your client is,
Right.
right? And so really, like, it really doesn't matter about, your hair. Like, if you look presentable, whatever's your brand, show up as that, but focus on them. They're the hero of the
Mm-hmm.
story. So that's what matters. And then I thought about, like, okay, so when it comes to social media, when it comes to podcasting, who's the hero of my story? And it's like the hairdressers that listen to me. And so if I show up a little disheveled or like whatever, like I'm just here, I'm stumbling on my words and, waving my hands around all crazy, if I'm focusing on my hero, which is the hairdressers, then it
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't matter, right? It's not about me. It's about them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like a good way to remind yourself of this is that when I was in college, I took a speech class, and public speaking is a huge fear of people. Somehow I've been able to, like, once you do it a few times, I feel like it's easier, but it's so terrifying. And in college, I'd never done it. Well, as I was sitting there waiting my turn to give my speeches, I wasn't even listening to the people talking. Like, I couldn't even hear them, truly, because I was so in my head, like, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to think of me? But then I started thinking, well, I can't be the only one sitting here doing this. Everyone's in their head. And so you're exactly right. Like, we're not the hero of the story. And I think that if we mess up, the right people will still follow us. If we
Mm-hmm.
put bad content out there, the right people will still come to our page. Like, my clients don't get upset if I'm not 100% all the time, because they care about me as a person. So I just feel like the first time you let that guard down, it's so intimidating. But
Mm-hmm.
once you do it and you realize nothing's going to happen, it's easier from there.
Absolutely. It's funny that you
Mhm.
bring up the speech thing. I actually was literally telling my husband last night, because I took a speech class in college also. I went to beauty school first and
Mhm.
then college because I was like, beauty school is just my fun job that's going to work me through college, right?
Right.
And oh God, yeah, I was like terrified in speech class. I was awful the whole semester. Like every time I get up there, I'm like shaking and sweating and stumbling on my words. And then the last project that we had was that we had to get up and give a 30-minute speech. And we had
Mhm.
to teach the class something. Okay. And so I'm like, I was like, hey, teacher, can I teach the class how to do a haircut? And she's like,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
sure, whatever you want. Girl, I nailed it. I was up there cracking jokes and I was just like edutaining the class, and they were like on the edge of their seats, just like soaking up everything I had to offer. And I was talking to my husband about this last night, and I was like, why is that? I think it's because I got out of my head, for one, and I realized I had something to offer. Again, they're the hero of the story, not me. And so I like took the focus back to them, right? Like, how can you use this in your life? How can you use this information? And then it was like pure gold.
Yeah, and that's awesome that they were that interested, even though they weren't hairstylists, you know?
Yeah.
So that was probably for sure a confidence boost for you because, you know, now when you teach to hairstylists that stuff, they for sure care, you know, they know what you're talking about. They can relate. So
Yeah.
it's cool that someone who had no earthly clue anything about hair
Yeah.
was that interested. That's cool.
I think it can be a little more intimidating when we're standing in front of a bunch of like licensed professionals, and
Yeah.
I definitely still feel this way, but I'm better now. But it's like you look in the crowd and you're like, oh, that person is like way better than I am at this, or like they don't care about what I'm saying right now. So you get all like weird. It's hard to not do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always too like, so the first year that I went to Behind the Chair show, I got to find this clip. I always say this to people. I always use this example, but I have to go find it. I presented an award to somebody on stage, and I'd never stood on a stage before. And I don't know if you have, but it's bright. You can't see anything. It's like very nerve-wracking. And you know how many people are out there. And so that's in your head. Girl, when I got up there to announce the award, I opened my mouth and no words came out.
Oh,
And like someone was there with me, thank God. So they just started talking, but like open mouth, no words. And the worst case scenario in my mind was that, you know, like I'd forget what I was going to say. So once it happened, yes, people laughed, but they were like cheering for me, you know, like they could tell I was nervous. But the next year when I went out there, I didn't forget my words, and I'd already experienced the worst possible thing in
yeah.
my mind.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't intimidated as much anymore. So I think sometimes failure can create more confidence in you. You sometimes, I think, don't need to look at it as such a negative. Just look at it as, how can I grow from this failure and be better in the future? Because we're only ever competing with ourselves, right? Like we can't be the person next door to us. We can't be the hairstylist down the road. Like we only can be our best selves. And I think when you kind of switch your mind to that mentality, it gets easier.
I love that. That reminds me of a quote I heard someone say in the last year where it was like, mistakes are just mistakes, right?
Yes.
Like you get other takes. That was just a mistake. No big deal.
Yeah. And how crazy would it be in life if nobody had mistakes? Like
Right.
then the one mistake we do have when we're 50 or 60 years old, it's going to hurt us a million times more, you know? It kind of makes us stronger in a way.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So do you bring these kind of messages into your social media ever? Like, do you kind of get on and like openly and honestly talk about these kind of things?
Yeah, I've started doing it more here recently, just because at first, again, I didn't know if my audience wanted to see that. But once I realized the value in it, even if it just helps one person, I'm always trying to talk about how I've overcome XYZ and how they can too, or you know, just telling them that their selves is good enough. They don't have to be other people. And I think too, what's really cool about the movement of mental health on social is that even if your page isn't this like self-help page, you can still incorporate it. You know, you don't have to just be strictly hair techniques or strictly, you know, cooking or whatever it is. It
Mm-hmm.
can be a mixture of all of it.
That's
We,
actually
we
what I was.
literally can make it whatever we want.
Yeah, totally. That's what I was going to say is like your messaging is almost just it's not specific to hairdressers. Like obviously you're like me where you feel a pull to that part of the industry because you love it, but like that is like across the board for anyone that's on social media is like I think the word authenticity is overused these days, right? But it's like there's not a better word really to describe it. It's like just be authentic and be yourself.
Yeah. And I think too that like somebody asked me once at a class, did I see a shift in like my followers or my growth whenever I started posting about that? And I mean, I don't necessarily know if I did or didn't. I just think that maybe like hairstylists stopped following me, but other people that weren't in the hair world started, you know? And so I think it balances out. And there's going to be times where you go through a dip in followers or almost like a pause on growth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that today everybody is trying to grow into this large platform. And so it's a little harder to see the growth, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
just have to cross your fingers and be authentic. There's that word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and know that the right people will start showing up.
Yeah. I think you're right too that for me the podcast was an easier platform to do that in.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, like filming and editing and doing all those things just seems more curated, whereas like just turning on a microphone and talking is more natural, and I'm easily more authentic talking
Mm-hmm.
than I am trying to record something. And so I wonder if that's why podcasting has gotten so popular too, is people
Mm-hmm.
just want that like normal, natural kind of human connection.
Yeah, and I think that this is a perfect way to, I can share like a 20-second clip on Instagram, but that's probably the longest clip I'm going to get someone's attention for, because they want to just keep swiping. Whereas with podcasts, people are having to choose to come because they want that connection. And I'm just excited for the chapter of having deeper conversations with people that aren't just 10 seconds or 20 seconds, and keeping their attention flowing because of the vulnerability and stuff that we'll be sharing there.
Yeah. And so for your podcast, do you feel like you're going to just try to attract like hair industry people to come chat with you? Or are you kind of like casting the net wide open for anyone that like wants to talk about social media and vulnerability and stuff?
I want anybody to come on. Of course, like you were saying, I feel like I have to, I'm always going to be a hairstylist, and that is where I started and that is where my followers came from. And so I have to stick to that, at least half the time. But the other half of the time, I just want to bring on anybody. Like, I think everybody has a story that is unique to themselves. And I think that, people like listening to other people's stories, how they've turned something crazy into something positive. And so anybody can come on. And I'm hopeful that I will be able to build a different type of community over on the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
which that was kind of my struggle with the name of my podcast. So I am going to call it Samantha's Beauty Confessions, just because I've branded that for myself. But the beauty in that is like the internal beauty. And the
Mm,
confessions in that is more like confessing your story to people. And so I feel like that name can be used in two different ways.
absolutely. Yeah, I was wondering about that too. So I like that. That's good.
Yeah, I went back and forth with it. But, I just think that as long as I kind of am open with that up front about the beauty portion of it and what it means, that really is the message I want to get out there, is just no matter what you're going through, like it's going to be okay. And you don't have to hide it. You don't have to go through it alone.
Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest, you could easily change the name at some point if you needed to. It's
Mhm.
like it's not imprinted on your forehead for life.
Exactly. Yeah, but see, I think that if I'm talking about it on my Instagram and I had this whole other name, because I'm not going to have an Instagram page for the podcast, it'll just all
Right.
be there.
Yes.
And I think it would just get confusing. So I like simplicity.
I do
We
too.
need more of that in the
Yeah.
world.
Seriously.
Hmm.
Especially when you have 8 platforms that you're posting on.
Exactly. Do you have a podcast one too? Or it's all under.
It's
Yeah.
all Your Hair Mentor. Yeah, I kind of
Okay.
had the same thing where I was like, I don't want to try to remember all these different things or like confuse
Mm-mm.
people, because I followed some other people that have like maybe I took a course that they have, but that has a completely different brand identity than how they are in social media. And then they have
Hmm.
a podcast also, and it's all separate. And I'm like, I cannot keep it straight. This is too much for me as a consumer. So I know it's going to be too much for people that I want to consume my stuff?
Yeah. Another thing that your episode with Carly said, I can't remember the exact thing, but like you need to be 100% somewhere.
You have to
Um,
full ass everything.
Yeah, full ass everything.
Yes.
So if I have other platform, I mean, I already have Threads and TikTok and all the things. So if I had to add one more account for my podcast for all those platforms, holy cow, I mean, you think burnout's real now, try to add a double or triple that.
Oh my gosh. I
I've never
know.
done that, but I can't even imagine.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, you got a full ass. That came from Maddie Cook from
Okay.
Bossier Salon. She's so funny. Yeah, and she's the one that was like, I was just half-assing everything and I had to full ass something. I was like, yes, I love that. I'm going to use that everywhere.
And it's
Hashtag
so
full ass.
relatable. It's so
Mm-hmm.
relatable. Like, because seriously, anytime you add something new in there, if you risk not full assing any of it. You
Mm-hmm.
can't be full in every area. You cannot.
Right, right. I feel like that was something that, like, as I get older, I recognize more and more. And it's like, it's okay, I feel like, to half ass some things, where
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm okay with it. I'm going into it with this mindset. I cannot give it this full attention that it needs right now. And that's okay. But I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
needed to just, like, really lean in hard on something to feel like I'm doing this one the way that I want to do it.
Yeah. And what's really helped me is joining groups and just like messaging people like hairstylists out there. I used to be intimidated to ask questions or to seem like I didn't know enough. But a lot of the learning that I've experienced in my business came from asking questions that I thought were going to be stupid because they're
Right.
not stupid. And somebody out there can help you. Other people have been there. And so I've started to just really put myself in situations where, I have a support system because at the end of the day, we all need that. And I may not be great at like Canva, but somebody else is, and they could help me, whereas I could help them do something else. Um, the world is a lot smaller than I think we realize, and people are actually like nice people are actually out there.
Yeah, yeah. And the same breath, though, like I agree with you. I feel like we're all like, just a few degrees of separation from each
Mm-hmm.
other. It always surprises me, and this happens often, how I come across someone on social media that's like this world renowned hairdresser that has all these accolades and like has a huge following and they're doing all these like amazing things. And I'm like, how have I never even heard of this person?
Mm-hmm.
There are like so many beautiful success stories out there that I haven't even had a taste of yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I know, and I
fascinating.
wonder if that's just because there's so many people on the app, or if that person is just kind of still more reserved in their own world right now. But they'll branch out hopefully eventually.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't know. I find the whole like connectivity of it all very fascinating.
Yeah, and I think too, like when I started on social media, it was a lot easier to grow. So, kind of from your question earlier, like I think back then you can't compare it to someone if they were starting today, just because there weren't as many people on there saturating the app to compete with in the algorithm.
Hmm.
And I think now it's a little more difficult. Would you agree?
Yes, I would absolutely agree. But I also think too, like followers or
Mm-hmm.
people, like I know I'm getting like pickier about who I'm gonna follow. Whereas I
Mm-hmm.
used to just like, bloop, 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 like, oh yeah, like da 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 da, whatever. And then I would like go if I needed to unfollow them later, unfollow them. But these days I'm kind of a little more like, do I actually want to follow this person? Do I actually like what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much saturation, I'm careful about who I let into my life, whose things I see as I'm scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if that's more what's driving the lack of growth is people just being like, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, like the I don't know, I don't want to say like copying, but I don't know another word for it. Everyone's starting to kind of do the same thing, and like a trend will take off. And then 60 million people will jump on the trend. And then you're just kind of like so sick of seeing the trend. You could almost predict what's coming up,
Yes.
which I get it. People are just like trying to find inspiration all the time or whatever. So no judgment at all. But I just think that that's also why people are more careful with who they're following. But I also want to say that followers don't mean success. And I say this at my classes all the time. Like, I am no more satisfied today with however many followers I have now than I was at 5,000. Promise. Like I'm more satisfied in the sense that I'm no longer in an unhealthy marriage and things like that personally. But
Yeah.
my business, like I don't feel like I've ever been at a following amount that made me feel like, oh, this is life changing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there is one. If so, I have not reached it yet. And so listeners, if you know of that magic number, let us know. But
Yeah.
I just don't think there is one. And I think that people, Edgy B Girl, do you follow her?
No, I don't even know who that is.
Her Instagram handle's at edgy B girl, and she has I don't know how many followers she has, but her account lost all of her followers at one point, and she was telling me that she had to start over from zero. But she has been doing. She was on the K18 little thing at New York with Carly that was on the billboard and stuff. She was on that. She is a member with Schwarzkopf. Like she does awesome things, and again, I don't know exactly how many followers she has, but that's proof that you can do awesome things and you don't have to have, 200,000 followers plus to do it.
Yeah, I've even heard people say that like there's a sweet spot of like, you need enough followers that like, if only a small percentage are seeing what you're saying, that's good. But if you get too much, you kind of become this like you're not as valuable. You're just like an entity almost. Like maybe that's not the right word, but like it's less personal. And then if you do have like let's say you have 1 million followers or 2 million followers, like you're not responding to DMs. You are not engaging in the same way that feels personal and, connecting. Where
Mm-hmm.
if you had like, 5 to 10,000 followers and then only a small percentage are, commenting and stuff, it's easier to kind of maintain and connect with
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that for a long time, everyone thought 10,000, 10,000, but I just think that you can't put a number on it because when you have that number in mind that you feel you have to get to, it takes the fun out of it. And if
Mm-hmm.
it's not fun, like the level of burnout will happen so much quicker because you
Yeah.
just feel pressure and like nobody can be creative when they feel that pressure. Like if anyone's feeling burnt out, I highly recommend like just post the content. Like if you post 3 days a week or 4, post content, but don't feel like you have to sit there and engage and comment back and all that. Do what you need to do for yourself in the point of your business you're in and go outside. Like I'm not an outdoorsy person by any means, but my boyfriend now is, and he has been so helpful in my creativity because he encourages me to like step out from the computer screen, step away from the phone screen, and let's like go do things that are going to spark creativity. And it really works. Something
Mm-hmm.
as simple as just like putting your feet in the grass and sitting in the sunlight. Like you would be surprised what comes to your brain when you're not occupying it with scrolling.
Oh, that's so true. They say that creativity is sparked by boredom.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't be creative unless we don't have like input coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You have to let your mind like for a second.
And for hairstylists, like I don't know how like kids in today's world, how they're going to be 20 years from today, but like I think hairstylists with our creative brains and constantly go, 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 it's hard for us to meditate and journal or just like sit still with our thoughts. It is for me.
Oh, me too.
Um, yeah. And so you have to force it. You have to like schedule that into your day and just go outside for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be this like 10-hour meditation, but just 10 minutes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that once you see the results, you'll keep it up.
Yeah. So what other things do you guys do for fun?
We just got back from the lake. We went there this weekend. And again, I'm not someone that goes outside much. So I was like exhausted all day yesterday. The sun really wears you out.
It
Um,
does.
yeah, but we try to just kind of go and do like I'm trying to work on my spontaneousness, spontaneity, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very spontaneous whatsoever. I'm very type A. So my boyfriend does a good job of just kind of planning things on the fly. We like to go snow skiing in the winter months, and I really liked the lake. I was kind of surprised by it.
Are you like on a boat or just like hanging out on the shore?
So we had jet skis this
Oh
weekend,
yeah.
and so we were kind of both. But I would love to go with somebody that had boats instead, so we could all be together. Because there was a group of us that went. But again, I was just shocked that I was able to be out in the sun that long and not just like bake. I'm really fair skinned, and so I was nervous about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you just got to do what works for you though.
Yeah, and I think last year I spent so much time. I taught in like 15 states in 6 months, and like I literally still think I'm recovering
Yeah.
from that exhaustion. And so I'm trying to just like take time away from thinking this year and just kind of prioritize my mental health because last year flew by. It was the fastest year of my life, hands down.
Mm-hmm. It only gets faster.
I know. And I'm having to like come up with I didn't have fun for so long, which is kind of sad, but I was my work for so many years and that was the only hobby that I had, which I think a lot of hairstylists can relate to. We
Yeah.
have a quote unquote fun job and so it's easy to get wrapped up in it. But I'm having to figure out who I am outside of work too.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you want to have kids?
I don't know. So I just turned 33
Okay.
and I would love one kid, but I feel like if I have a kid, I'm gonna have like triplets or twins or something
Do they
because
run in your family?
they run in my boyfriend's side of the family.
Oh,
And I don't know if the male or female determines the number, but I do think that would just be like my luck is I'm so adamant on one child that I'll probably have multiple for
that's
sure.
so funny. Well,
But
I
I might
know
adopt. Do you have kids?
I do. I have two young kids. And yeah, I
Okay.
think like adopting, having your own, having one, having three, we all kind of go through like a metamorphosis of like trying to figure out who we are after we become a parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I did not do any sort of self exploration or thinking about this ever before having kids. I was super naive. I was a complete idiot, actually. Let me tell you. I was like the mom to be that was like, oh, having a baby is not going to change my life at all. I'm just going to like baby wear, and my calm energy will wear off on the baby. We'll be able to do all the things we want to do. Yeah, no, it did not work out that way. And so I had like a total identity crisis for a while, trying to figure
Mm-hmm.
out who I was outside of being a hairdresser, who I was outside of being a mother. It was like, who is Crystal? What
Mm-hmm.
fills Crystal's cup? And I think I'm still figuring that out. It's like a constant evolution, but I wasn't even aware that I needed to do that before I needed to. And so I love that you're thinking about this now, because I feel like no matter how many kids you have, if you have kids, it'll probably be easier for you to re-figure out who you are and what serves you.
Yeah. And I think honestly, like I don't wish a divorce on anybody, but me getting a divorce. So my ex-husband had like a drug overdose and I didn't know he was on drugs. So it was very eye-opening. And after I got a divorce, right after was the pandemic. And so I was having to
Oh
sit
my
still
gosh.
for the
Yeah.
first time. Like I couldn't work through my trauma. I had to just like sit in my thoughts. And that was really hard. And so I think that was also a blessing in disguise for me because I had to start asking myself tough questions and like processing those emotions. And so, now when the world opened back up, I started getting busy again. And I kind of like let go of that healing part. And now that I've been with my boyfriend for a while, I'm having to think, do I want to get remarried? And I do want to, but I'm terrified. So I've started going back to therapy and really, again, just working on who I am at my core and like learning to almost like trust myself again, honestly, to be able to get married. Because if I do have kids one day, I don't want to be um, still having to deal with that hurt from
Yeah.
years ago that I had to. I'd rather try to be the healthiest version. And I know things can happen and I could get, pregnant unexpectedly or whatever
Hmm.
before I'm ready. You're never going to feel ready. But I just want to be as good of a version of myself as I can.
And I think just the fact that you're even having that in your awareness means you
Mhm.
probably will be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone tells me like you're going to be such a good mom, like you need to have kids and I do think I'll be a good mom, but I think if I'm not careful, I'll be a helicopter mom. And I
Mm.
don't want to do that to my kids. So, I need to release some of my anxiety and fears before bringing on new lives that I'm responsible for.
And new anxieties and new fears.
Exactly, because then I'll feel all those so much
Oh,
harder,
yeah.
I'm sure. How
Oh,
old are your
yeah.
kids?
They're 6 and 8 years old. My son is
Okay.
6, my daughter's 8. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we're past like baby stages now and kind of getting into like new struggles and new fears as a parent and also new fun things too.
Yeah, like the independence is starting to come up and I'm sure that's hard to let go of a little bit too is, they're becoming more of their own little humans.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they have their own personalities and their own wants and needs and like
Mhm.
very different between the two of them too. So learning how to like kind of manage the family dynamics with like what serves this person that doesn't serve this person and also me and my husband.
Yeah, people that have kids and work, like Carly, she has 2 kids and she does all the things she does. Like I y'all are just awesome. Like I can barely function with just one human. It's a
Wait,
lot for
let's
me.
be clear. I'm barely functioning myself. Okay.
Okay, okay, good. That's what Carly told me when I did her my class on her deal is that she's like, "No, I'm barely making it, I promise." I'm like, "Well, you make it look easy."
Yeah, right. I had someone message me on social media a while ago that is a mom in Australia
Mhm.
who's trying to do some education piece as well. She's a hairstylist. She has kids. Or no, she's trying to write a book. That's what it was. And I had released that I
Mhm.
wrote my book. And so she was like, I don't understand. Like, how do you do this? Like, you just seem so like put together. I'm like, oh no, I think I need to be a little more real because I am not. Like, I'm always on the verge of a mental breakdown, especially depending on
Mhm.
what time of month it is.
Exactly.
Right? Like, sometimes I'm like, I have got my shit together. I'm doing great. And other times I'm like, what am I doing? This is insane. I am scramble brain right now. So,
Mhm.
yeah, no, like, we're all just barely hanging on, right?
And it's okay. Like as long as we are prioritizing our own mental health, our kids' mental health, and taking time for fun. I swear that is the cherry on top of the equation, in my opinion.
Yes, that's the thing that you have to full ass, right? You have to
Mhm.
like really focus on those things. And then the other things can kind of be like, yeah, okay, we'll deal with that. It's okay.
Yeah, but you do have a calm, like I can like sense that you're just like a calm energy person. I'm not a calm energy person. I don't know like how I come across, but like I am very high strung. But I think people think that I'm calm. So maybe I do hide it well.
Mhm.
Because my clients are like, "Wait, you're stressed out right now?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, like my heart rate is high, everything's high." But I think maybe we're just good at pretending.
Yeah. I think I'm a naturally like overly optimistic person to the
Mhm.
point where I'm like, it'll be fine. It'll work itself out. And then I have moments of panic where I'm like, oh crap, this is not working itself out. We need to do something.
When's it you're like looking at your watch like, "When's it going to work out?"
Yeah, oops. And my husband is probably more like you. He's like super organized and like thinks ahead, plans ahead. And I'm just kind of like, we'll just go, it's
So you're
fine.
my boyfriend and I guess I'm your
Yeah.
husband. And I
Yeah.
think that's good is to be with someone the opposite of you. My ex-husband was a lot like me in the cleanliness organization, all that. And I thought that was a good thing, like,
Right.
oh, our house will always be clean. And it was, but like that's not life, like it's okay if you have socks on the floor or whatever. And I feel like that's been the beauty too of kind of this restart in my life is just seeing that like it's okay if you leave a cup in the sink. Like the world's
Yeah.
not going to end. You got to
Yeah.
be a human. You
Uh,
have to be a human.
Totally. It sounds so cliche. God, there was a show. What was a show in like the 90s? It was like, is it My So-Called Life or like Messy Life? Something like that. Where it's basically saying the same thing. Like life is messy and like not perfect and that's okay was the
Hmm.
message. And you're like, yeah, 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 I get it. And now I'm like, oh wait, I actually feel like I'm getting it now. Like it's
Hmm.
totally okay. It's okay to just be you and be
Hmm.
human.
Yeah, and I think too with your kids, like just seeing, the seeing you work and seeing like how you've overcome like, feeling overwhelmed or whatever. I think it's good for kids to see that. Now you don't want to show them like the crazy sides of it that, age appropriate is what I always tell people, but
Yeah,
I think it's sometimes good for kids to not think everything is so cookie cutter like perfect, because
absolutely.
then whenever they experience it later, it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to set unrealistic expectations for them.
I always say now, like, people always joke that you're a perfect parent before you have kids. And I feel like that's how I feel now. So maybe when I do have kids one day, if that ever comes, like, maybe I'll feel different. But right now, I'm like, no, like, let your kids see a little bit age appropriate things here and there to make them
Yeah.
feel more normal.
Oh, it's always easier to like judge someone else before you have kids too. Like, oh, I would not do it that way. And then later you're
Hmm.
like, oh crap, I'm totally doing it that way that I was judging someone for. Oops.
I know. I think that too, me getting a divorce made me, you know, I don't like to like admit this, but like before my divorce, I was a little more judgmental of people who were divorced because that wasn't something I believed in. And I always said my parents were divorced. I'll never do that. I'll never
Mm,
do this, this, and this. Now I don't say that. Like you rarely will hear me saying anything that I'll never do because that is when life will slap you right in the face every
hmm.
single time.
Yep. Yep. So
Every
true.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life is crazy. Like it has a way of reeling us back in when we think we've got it figured out.
Yeah. So, does your boyfriend support you with like your online stuff at all? Is he ever like holding cameras for you or like helping you do stuff?
He doesn't help me in the salon, but he comes with me to all my classes and he's not a photographer, but he's really into photography. And so he'll set up like a tripod at my classes and he films everything for me because I'm a psycho and I like to watch it back so I can improve myself.
Uh-huh.
And you know, that's probably something that I need to a little bit let go of control. But yeah, he goes with me to all the things. And it's funny now because people people know him. So if I'm somewhere, they're like, where's John? When's John coming? So he's really kind of branded himself as like this big supporter to me, which is really awesome. He does, though, put me in my place when it's time to unwind and put my phone up. And that's something my ex-husband never did. He never, ever asked me to not pay attention to my phone. And for that reason, I didn't, and it really hurt our communication and stuff. And so now my boyfriend, I like that he does that, even though maybe like the first 3 seconds, I'm like, wait, don't boss me around,
Yeah.
I really like that he wants to spend time with me, and I appreciate him going with me to all the stuff.
Yeah, he's like part of your journey.
And he's so like cheerleader, I feel like if I look back at him in the back and, I'm feeling nervous, he knows to give me a thumbs up or like a smile or whatever to make me feel better. He's like a emotional support human at my shows with me. It's awesome.
I feel like you could probably almost do an episode on your podcast with him or something.
Yes, I want to, for sure. Just kind of getting his idea on an outsider of the hair industry who's kind of seen the behind the scenes of it, because he works in the corporate world. And so when he started dating me, he was like, wow, this is like a whole other, universe to me. But he likes it. He thinks it's so interesting. And so now he can work virtually and he's able to kind of experience both worlds.
I've teased with my husband that I want to do an episode with him, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know about that." He's totally my support animal also.
What does he do?
He's a fireman.
Okay. Yeah, so he works like so many days and then he's off so many days. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep. So that gets a little tricky scheduling. Like in the summer, this has been crazy trying to do, podcasting and all this stuff when the kids are home too. Because usually I'll try to schedule it when he's home and can take them, or like when they're in school. So this summer has been a little bit of a circus, but we do what we can. Again,
yeah, for sure.
Right. Just
you can only do what you can.
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, like, so standing behind the chair, you have to be standing behind the chair, right? I've taken my podcasting stuff with me and like been out of town visiting someone and like just gone and hid in a room for a little bit and recorded a podcast episode. And so like the freedom of being able to move in space is like fantastic. And it does make it seem a little more doable than if I was just trying to work behind the chair all the time. Not to take anything away from working behind the chair. I think it's a beautiful business, but it's just not what I'm trying to do right now. And I see the beauty of being able to be a little mobile.
Yeah, because you're right. Like you can't even text, really. I mean, like you're in it.
Yes.
And that was something funny when we started dating, me and my boyfriend. He was like, it took you like 10 hours to get back to me. And I'm like, yeah, babe, come to work with me one day and just watch. And then when he did, he's like, oh, it's not, I'm not on a computer responding to emails and then I can text you back. Like someone has chemicals on their hair. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree. I like the flexibility of it.
Do you see yourself stepping away from working behind the chair at some point?
I don't know. I feel like I love my clients. I've raised my prices. I've cut back on my clientele as much as I feel like as I can. I guess I could always raise them more, but and people stuck with me. And I really don't have any clients that I dread anymore. And I love the one-on-one conversations. So I'm hoping the only way that I think it could make sense is my clientele is my income. If Instagram disappeared tomorrow, that is my income. And so I'm hoping through my podcast, I'm able to implement some of that income through, sponsors and things like that, to where I feel comfortable cutting it in half a little more and maybe just taking clients for content purposes, because I need that stability that the clientele provides, So if I wasn't worried about money, yes, I would stop doing hair. It doesn't make sense for me anymore to do hair. That's really not where most of my money comes from anymore, but it's where the stability of the money is. And so again, if the social media platforms disappeared, I'd always have that. And I just don't want to get rid of it. It's intimidating. And I don't want my clients to feel, people always say you can get them back, but what if they didn't want to come back because they were just left one day? In a perfect world, I wish I had someone that wanted to take my clients they could just like babysit them for
Yeah.
me. And then if I wanted to come back part-time or whatever, but that's not going to happen. So I work in a building that it's just me doing hair. So I don't have that opportunity or that option. And I think I'll stick with it as long as humanly possible, but it's almost not humanly possible anymore.
Yeah.
What was it for you that made you stop?
I was like a frog in boiling water. It was like doing this thing and I'm doing this thing and then I'm doing the mom thing and the kid thing and like everything was just kind of like crescendoed into this like something has to give. And for me, I've been behind the chair for 22 years. I've been licensed for 22 years. And I've seen ebbs and flows. I've moved to new states and built businesses. And I was getting to the point with where I'm at now in Reno, Nevada, where I was busier than I needed to be or wanted to be doing hair. I was like turning people away, right? Yeah, same thing, like raising my prices, turning people away. And it's like, by the way, raising your prices never makes people leave you. It just doesn't. Like you're always thinking like, well, I'm going to raise my prices and then some people will just have to choose to leave. It's not ever that simple. You're like, crap, wait a minute, they all stayed. Or like, okay, I still have to tell people no. Anyway, I'd gotten to that point and it was like, okay, I really, really feel like where I'm going with the online business and the podcast, like I have this, like, I can feel it in my bones that I'm going to make some beautiful changes in this industry and I can't do it standing behind the chair, right? That's really what it came down to is like where I want to go and where I see myself going, that standing behind the chair does not fulfill that. And so I had to let it go. It was like, if I'm going to get rid of anything, it has to be that. And oh my God, I'm still having an identity crisis over it. I swear to you. I like asking other people this question too, because it always comes down to the same answer. Like you said, financially, yes, it's supporting you. But what I heard was you don't want to let your clients down. You love your people. We get this like altruistic fulfillment of helping them and like, making them feel good and supporting them and like internal and external. And so getting rid of that piece of the puzzle is really hard.
Yeah, like we love them,
Yes.
It's a relationship that's consistent and nobody likes change. It's scary. So I think it's awesome that you're brave enough because that's really what it is. Like I'm not brave enough yet, I guess, at the end of the day to do what's best for me. And I think that eventually you do feel like you said, like you're just going to boil over. And I am so close to that point, but I see what you see. I see a future that doesn't involve behind the chair anymore. And as much as that like pains me, I mean, when you asked me that, like it was just like chest tightened over here because I'm like, oh no, how do I answer that?
Yeah.
But the truth is like I see myself helping people on such a deeper level than behind the chair. And that all comes from me speaking and sharing my story and connecting with other people through podcasting and through, motivational speaking. And I'd love to write a book. And I have so much to share and so many life experiences that could help. And at the end of the day, that's all I want to do is help people.
That's exactly the conclusion that I came to. And like me standing behind the chair, I'm helping people. It's a very
Exactly.
It's a direct reflection of you helping people, right? It's a transactional thing. Like you do the hair, you get paid, they say thank you. It's like one and done. And so you get that fulfillment in that regard. And I know for me, at some point I realized like I want to help hairstylists. That feeling, that altruistic, like, oh, I did good. I want that to be towards hairstylists, which means they're going to go make more clients feel happy. So really you're like elevating the amount of happiness in the world and the industry by helping hairstylists. And so that's kind of what I wrapped my head around finally that made me be like, okay, we can do this.
So did you just send your clients a text that was like, I'm not doing hair anymore, or email?
Yeah, I was like, it was like, I'm really sorry, but so I went to like 2 educational events that kind of made me have this like aha moment of like really where I see myself. I had this vision of me standing on a stage telling my story that I want to tell. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to make this happen. And so my clients all know that I've been on this explorative journey of like, what am I going to do? Like, who am I teaching and what am I talking about? And it finally came full circle. So I was like, hey, you knew this was coming.
I know. I think mine would know too.
Yeah. It was like, they're all just kind of like, yay, I still get to come see you when they would come in. And so it was like, I'm sorry. And I had some people that I referred them to, but like, I wish I could have cloned myself or like trained someone to be like, here, do exactly this and you take care of my people. I would have felt so good about that. I've since had a few come back to me and text me and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm not happy here. Do you have any more recommendations? And like, oh, the heartstrings.
I know. Cause me, I'd be like, yeah, come up to the salon today.
I know,
Like,
please let me just do it for you, right?
I know. And it is, I think you have to go through that cycle because I used to be that person that came on Sundays at 8 o'clock at night or whatever, just literally so accommodating. And then it just became impossible. And so now I work this specific day of the week. I do try to change the day up a little bit just to accommodate people's schedules, but I'm sticking to that day, like it's just that one day usually. And I've gotten better. So I think the next step is just being like, you know what? I'm sorry that you're not happy there. I hate that for you. It makes me feel so bad because it does. We do feel bad,
Yeah.
but it's like, I can't find it in my soul to come there anymore and just like take that on because I don't know. Life is so short and
Yes.
we have to live out our purpose. And I
Yep.
know that my purpose is bigger than foiling.
Yes, exactly. Not to discount the art of foiling, but yes, I completely agree. Yeah.
It used to bring so much joy to me, and that's how I know it's not my purpose because it used to bring the amount of joy that now speaking to people brings, and so I know that there are going to be these turns, and who knows, maybe I'll speak to people for almost a decade, and then I'll be like something else is coming, but you just kind of have to go with the flow of life.
Mm-hmm. I don't know where I read this. I read somewhere that there's like an evolution of like in a trade or a career or whatever. And so first you go and you get trained to do the thing. Okay. Then you do the thing, like working behind the chair. And then once you master that, then you teach the thing. And then once you master that, you inspire people to do the thing. Right. And so it's like this full circle kind of situation. And I was like, yes, that's where I'm at. So it's like, I'm not trying to discount people working behind the chair. Like that is a beautiful, powerful position to be in. It's just like, for me, it's not serving me anymore. I've evolved into a different place where I need to be now. And it sounds like you have too.
Yeah, and that's totally, I love that circle thing. I might message you after this and have you send me that part because I need to find whatever book you read that in and read it because that's exactly true. I'm at the inspiration stage now.
Me too. Me too. Where I'm like, I want to light a fire under people to like go to beauty school, to embrace their beautiful, honorable position behind the chair and turn it into a career that serves them.
Yeah, I want to be the person that I needed when I was in the low
Yes.
points of life.
Totally. Yes. I know I personally kind of stumbled into doing hair and really didn't embrace it until I kind of understood the value and the impact that I had in my clients' lives. Prior to that, I just thought it was like something that like you did for fun or it was like a hobby, you know? There's so many people that feel that way that I'm like, oh, honey, you just need to know it's so wonderful.
I know. And they just need that like somebody to tell them it's okay to like get out of whatever funk they're in or whatever hard time and show them the other side because you don't know until you're shown. And I feel like, you're going to do awesome things and hopefully my podcast and just everything works out. I'm just like so hopeful.
Yeah.
But I'm nervous and I think it's okay. I think it's okay to be nervous when you're excited about something.
Yes, it is. Being excited and nervous shows that you care, right?
Yeah. Cause if I was just throwing it out there and like so confident in it, I feel like it would just be meaningless, like you never know what's going to happen. This podcast could be the best thing I ever did, or it could be the craziest thing I ever ended up doing. But
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that if I put out the message and it's coming from a genuine place, that it will take me to, good places, whatever that good place is.
Awesome. Well, Samantha, this has just been an absolute pleasure. But
Yes,
before we go, I want you to tell my listeners where they can find you and where they can message you or email you to respond if they have questions for you and where they can find you. Give me all the things.
Okay, so my website is samanthasbeautyconfessions.com, and I have online courses on there as well as any in-person classes that I'm teaching. And then my Instagram is also Samantha's Beauty Confessions. And my podcast is launching on August 21st. The date is set. It's ready to go. And so definitely look for that podcast everywhere and make sure you subscribe because I promise there's going to be awesome conversations on there. I respond to DMs probably the quickest. So if somebody needs, an immediate answer, I try to do that as much as possible throughout the day. So I'm there every day and it's really me. No one's helping. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to listening to your podcast as well.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I love talking to you.
Yeah, me too. Awesome. Okay, well, I will make sure and put all that stuff in the show notes, and we'll just kind of stay tuned. And I'm just excited for you. I can't wait to see where you go with this.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Bye.
All right, friend. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Your Hair Mentor podcast. It has been my pleasure to be here as your host. Again, my name is Crystal Green. And until next time, my friend, as I always love to say, have a wonderful hair day, and I'll see you then. Okay, bye.